Professor Ramón Grosfoguel is a Puerto Rican sociologist and a full professor at Chicano Latino Studies in the Department of Ethnic Studies at the University of California, Berkeley. Born in San Juan, am I pronouncing it correctly, Prof?
San Juan.
San Juan. Puerto Rico. He obtained his bachelor's degree in sociology at the University of Puerto Rico in 1979. His master's degree is Urban Studies at Temple University in 1986, and his doctorate in sociology at Temple University in 1992. After receiving his doctorate, he obtained 2 postdoctoral degrees, one of which was from the Bernard Braudel Center, Maison de Science I cannot pronounce this, in Paris, France, 1993 to 94. His research interests include decolonization of knowledge and power, international migration, and political economy of the world system. He has a research associate of the Maison de Science DIPOM in Paris for many years. He has authored several books, including Colonial Subjects, Puerto Ricans, in a global perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here. For those who doesn't know me, I come from the island of Puerto Rico, like Nelson, and just to say a few words about this, Puerto Ricans, in relation to the U.S. empire, we are all in different degrees racialized as colonial racial subjects inside the empire. It doesn't matter your skin color. Whiteness in the USA is defined in a very narrow way. You know, anybody who doesn't fit that narrow definition is already non-white and is already part of the inferior races of the empire. This is important to know because many times we kind of ontologize the place where we're coming from. And many times I always say in my classes that the construction of categories of race are historically bounded. What I mean by that is that you need to go to colonial history to understand how these categories work and how they are built and what are the boundaries of the categories. I'll give you an example I always give in my classes. One person could be black in New York, Indian in Dominican Republic, and white in Haiti. The same person. How do you explain that? You cannot explain that without understanding colonial history and without understanding the way the construction of these categories are built. Of course, whoever is classified as black, you are below the line of the human, okay? But look at this. One person could be black in New York, Indian in Dominican Republic, and white in Haiti, okay? So just to, I'm going to leave it there because that will entail a long conversation, go to the history of Dominican Republic, New York, Haiti, and explain all this stuff. It will take too long. But just to show how arbitrary these definitions are built, because the empires build this definition according to their own interests, according to relation of forces, according to many circumstances. And so in Puerto Rico, we have a very particular situation because we are racialized inside the empire. It doesn't matter your skin color. We don't belong to the category of whiteness of the US empire. We're outside that. Even people, white Puerto Ricans. But inside Puerto Rico, then we have the racial formation of Latin America. So we have we live in between these two forms of hierarchies of race. You know, in Latin America, the racial formation is different from the USA. It will entail 2 hours just to discuss that. I don't want to go there because it will take all the time, but just to tell you how the positionality of being Puerto Rican gives you this, you want to call it, this space that allow you to see both forms of hierarchies of race, you see, that are different from each other, but that we live the two at the same time in many ways, you see? And so this is, and it gives us then a critical view. I mean, you have a critical perspective of these things. It gives you a critical insight into the Latin American white supremacist form of domination and the American Anglo-American form, okay? And they're different, very different one from the other in the way these categories are constructed, in the way this is built, etc. That could be a seminar, okay? Because I think it gives some insights into how these things are historically formed, okay? So we cannot take for granted categories of race in the sense that, of course, in the place where you're in, you understand how these categories are built, but sometimes you travel to other places and you encounter that the categories you were born into are not the same as when you travel to another place. So what you thought was black might not be black in some place, or what you thought was white might not be white, you see, in some place, that kind of thing. It becomes very complicated. But the important thing is where everywhere in the modern world, you have racial hierarchies of domination. And whoever is classified as black or indigenous or at the bottom, they're going to go through a process of violence and dispossession. Doesn't matter who is classified, but whoever is classified on those categories in the modern world, they're going to be dispossessed and they're going to suffer systemic violence, okay? So for example, someone like me, in Puerto Rico, there's no way you don't have black blood in your family, okay? There's no way of, nobody can claim, and there is a joke in Puerto Rico of people who claim, oh, I'm purely white, and everybody say, okay, let's look at your grandmother. And you know, and so it's a joke in Puerto Rico, but because there's no such a thing because of the colonial history of the Caribbean, Puerto Rico, etc. So for example, in Puerto Rico, I'm classified as white. My brother is classified as black in the same family, you know? But when I travel to the USA, when I travel to the USA, I'm non-white. You see, I go into the category of Puerto Rican, Latino, etc. That is a racial category in the USA, okay? And I can tell you story after story of what it entails in terms of violence that I've lived. I can give you a lot of anecdotes of that you already know because you have lived it here in South Africa. But over there, the violence of white supremacy system of the USA is the jails are full of people that are black or people that look like me, okay? Latinos, okay? The jails are full of people like this. So these things, so a lot of Latin American elites, for example, they hate to go to the USA. White elites in Latin America, they hate to go for vacation to the USA because the moment they step out of the airplane, they're not white anymore, you see? And they have to face, you know, so I know a lot of, for example, Mexican white elites, they don't want to go to the USA because they don't want to do vacation. People with money, all of that, because they know the moment they step out of the airplane, they're going to face white supremacy in their faces, you know? And they don't want to leave that, you know? They want to do it to other people in Mexico, but they don't want someone else to do it for them. So look at the complexities of these things. But anyway, just to say where I'm coming from and what are the experiences, okay? In Puerto Rico, I don't live what my brother lives, you see? But when I'm in the US, I live what my brother lives. You see, this is like very complex. But anyway, from the point of view of US empire, all people in the island are inferior races for them. You see? Doesn't matter your skin color for them. You're not white. The white elites in Puerto Rico, they're not white for the Americans. Okay, and so there are all these complexities. But anyway, that could be a seminar about all these racial formations, which shows how we are all human beings, and these are all categories that are imposed in different places for purposes of exploitation, domination, etc. Okay. Having said that, my talk today was going to be about how modernity as a civilization of death, is the secularization of a theology of domination that we call Christendom. That was my talk. I wanted to show how modernity is just hiding the theology of domination known as Christendom. I didn't say Christianity. I said Christendom. Okay? And I wanted to show you the transition from Unitarian Christianity, which had the notion of difference within unity that is shared by many cosmologies of the Global South, such as Ubuntu, such as Pachamama, such as Tawhid, such as all different cosmologies that share at least that point, the idea of non-dualistic concept of holistic is shared despite discrepancies as opposed to the dualism of Christendom, okay? And what you have in modernity is that theology of domination created by Constantine in the Roman Empire in the 4th century, carry on all the way till today, because the modern project is the secularization of the narratives and structures of domination, that theology of domination that we named Christendom. I was asked to present something else. So my title of the talk of today is not going to be about this. It's going to be about something else. And so I just want to clarify that so people are not expecting a talk based on the title. But that was what I was intended to do. I'm not going to do that. So let me say, I'm going to present today I was asked to talk more about the geopolitics and the cartography of power of the world we live from a decolonial perspective, okay? So let me say the following. The white left has a paradigm about the cartography of power, okay? So I was interested in entering that terrain of disputing their cartography of power, because for many reasons, okay? One of them is because a failed cartography of power. Eurocentric Marxism, Eurocentric socialism of the 20th century failed because they have a Eurocentric paradigm about the cartography of power. And they put the causation of the problems in the wrong place, and therefore came with the wrong solutions. So we need to decolonize ourselves from that paradigm that have led to a defeat of the left in the 20th century. And Hugo Chavez, the leader of the Bolivarian Revolution, was constantly saying, we need to move away from the 20th century socialism to create the 21st century socialism. Cannot be a repetition of the problems of 20th century socialism. Then we're going to, again, repeat all the problems we're fighting against. And we need to learn from those problems. Now, I'm saying this with humility. Okay, let me clarify this. I'm not coming here to say, oh, these people were wrong, oh, how wrong they were. No, we have to be humble, because these people put their life at stake to transform the system. Many of them died in the process, became martyrs in the struggle. And so we need to do this with respect. They are the first ones that will be telling us today, hey, don't commit the errors we made in the 20th century. Look critically at what we did to do it better next time. You see? They are the first one telling us this. So we need to do it in the spirit of humbleness, that respect. We need to respect, assume their mistakes, know that these people put their life at stake, know, and then go in depth into what happened, why the project to transform and destroy this civilization of death didn't happen, why capitalism is still alive and here with us, okay? So this is a paradigm that we need to criticize, and we need to decolonize from that, okay? So my work in decolonizing the paradigms of political economy is precisely to put there a cartography of power that will give us a different understanding of where the problems are, to come up with the proper strategies to try to defeat this system. So while the paradigms of the white left identify 2 or 3 hierarchies of power, in my work I identify 16 hierarchies of power. 16. Because in my work, one conclusion I have is that we're not in an economic system. We are in a civilization. And this is very important. When I say civilization, I'm not using the right-wing term, white supremacist term of civilization. They usually fall into a culturalist, racist argument about civilizations. And they put a line, an evolution in history about superior civilization, inferior civilization. I'm not talking this way. I'm talking about civilizations as world systems, as structures, not culturalist arguments, okay? But as civilizations have boundaries because they are world systems. They are global social systems, okay? So we have in history many civilizations, okay? But these civilizations are social systems. So I'm looking at it as social systems, okay? That have forms of political authority, forms of economy, forms of spirituality, forms of relationship between humans and non-humans. It has a package of different aspects. So that's why I call it a civilization, because it's a package of multiple hierarchies, okay? In this case of domination, okay? So we need to go in depth into this question to be able to move forward and beyond the Eurocentric paradigms of 20th century socialism, so that we think into the 21st century beyond the problems and limits of the Eurocentric Marxists of the 20th century, okay? So first thing I'm going to be mixing anecdotes with theoretical formulations and things like that. I'll give you the first anecdote. When I was at SUNY Binghamton was like the center of the world system theorists. Immanuel Wallerstein was there, Giovanni Arrighi was there, Terence Hopkins was there, all the big names of political economy of the world system, okay? They were all there. I would say I had the privilege of beginning my career as a professor there. I did a postdoc with Wallerstein in Paris 1 year, and then I was recruited in this program as a professor. So I was there 5 years. And let me tell you something. I sat down in every single course of Giovanni Arrighi and Immanuel Wallerstein and Terence Hopkins. I was a professor. I was sitting there as a student, because these are great masters, okay? Great, you say that in English, masters? Great intellectuals. Okay, sorry. In Spanish, masters means someone who is a great teacher, So I'm translating wrongly, sorry. So they were great intellectuals, great teachers, So I sat down there to listen to their lectures, And I, in every course, every semester, I will be there as I was a faculty, but I was there sitting there auditing all these classes, because I saw it as a luxury, being there with all these people, and missing a class of these people. I said, I cannot miss any class. I have to be there. So that gave me an insight into the strength and the problems, okay, of the paradigms of political economy of the white left. One of the debates I had with Arrighi and Wallenstein was the following. They talk about the European colonial expansion, and then they say that out of the European colonial expansion comes a system that is capitalism, okay? It was formed through the European colonial expansion. I don't deny that, okay? I'm not denying that the European colonial expansion, that is colonialism, was at the foundation of capitalism, not the other way around. Capitalism is founded by colonialism. This is very important, okay? But it has consequences. And consequences for the white left paradigm and consequences for a decolonial view. So the European colonial expansion, and then you have the formation of a world market, capitalist market, through this European colonial expansion. Okay? And then they will say the only thing new that happened after 1492 is a capitalist logic of accumulation at a world scale. The rest is secondary because it was already there. I said, it was already there where? And they would say, in Europe. I asked them, what about racism? Well, there was racialism already in Europe. What about patriarchy? Oh, there was Christendom patriarchy already in Europe. Okay, and what about Eurocentrism or Christendom? Oh, that was already in Europe. That's not new. The only thing new is this logic of capital accumulation at a world scale. That's why we define the system, the new system, after 1492 as a capitalist world system. But then I tell them, but wait a minute. You are telling me that then you're looking at the world from Europe expanding. What if we shift the geography of reason, and instead of seeing Europe expanding, we see Europe arriving? What will happen there? Then you cannot tell me that all of that is not new. Okay, it might not be new for Europe, for the civilization that existed in Europe at the time, but it was new for everywhere else that they arrived. And if that's the case, then you need to account for all those structures of power that the Europeans brought with them in the European colonial expansion. You cannot leave them as superstructure, epiphenomenon of capital accumulation, secondary, not relevant. You see what I'm trying to say? Because the worst of Eurocentrism is to think that local European history is world history. That's the worst of Eurocentrism. So I was listening to these radical leftist political economists now coming up with a super Eurocentric perspective, because they're taking local European history as world history. All of this exists in Europe, therefore this is not new. But for indigenous people in the Americas, when the European arrived, there was all of that was not new. What was not new? I'm sorry, new. They were all new. That was not something. There was no Christendom there. There was no racism there. There was no patriarchy there. Okay, there was no Eurocentrism or Christendom or, you see what I mean? So we're talking about a package of multiple hierarchies of power that the Europeans brought with them wherever they went. Okay? So if that's the case, we need to then reformulate the way we understand the relationship between modernity and capitalism. We cannot continue thinking about modernity as an emancipatory project, the way the Enlightenment, European Enlightenment think about. We cannot continue thinking of modernity as a superstructure, epiphenomenon, secondary. Because what expanded was not an economic system. What expanded was a civilization. Okay? The economic system of capitalism was formed and constructed and built through the logics of domination of that civilization. You follow me? So and now my decolonial critique is that we cannot think the paradigm of 20th century socialism thought that the problem was an economic system, capitalism. The other things are epiphenomenon, derivative of this system of accumulation, exploitation. And if we solve this economic system, the rest will be solved. And the problem is that that's the wrong understanding of the relationship between the civilization, modernity, and capitalism. Okay? Because there's no such a thing as capitalism as insulated, isolated system here, and then over there, modernity. And all these other hierarchies of power. But capitalism is the economic system of a civilization. Capitalism is the economic system of a civilization. What are the implications of this? That all the hierarchies of power, of domination, of the civilization, of the modern Christendom civilization, all the categories of domination organize capitalism from within, not as a superstructure or derivative or from within. So all the process of dehumanization against women, against LGBT, against people of color, against plants, animals, all the forms of domination you see, okay, coming from that civilization of Christendom, because there are dualisms there that were already producing these hierarchies in sexuality, gender, race, nature, all this dehumanization, cosification, I don't know if that's a word in English, that's in Spanish definitely, making subjects into objects. So you turn nature, living beings, into objects, not into subjects. Indigenous people have always reminded us that the nature, what we call nature in the West, are living beings, they're subjects, they're not objects. In Christendom, they are not only objects, they belong to Satan, to evil. In Christendom. I don't have the time to develop that, but I wanted to discuss that here because that's a very important point, because what Descartes is going to do is secularize this dualism of human nature of Christendom. You see? And Christendom classify as part of evil and Satan and all of that, everything in nature. And they will classify human beings as being possessed by evilness into nature. And they will classify in Christendom patriarchy women as suspicious of evil forces. And they will classify them over there in nature. And so who is the one who saved themselves? The emperor or the monarch and its followers. Okay, these are the divine beings representative of God on earth. This is Christendom. This is not Christianity. This is not Unitarian Christianity. This is not the message of Jesus Christ. This all a distortion that came later, 400 years later, okay? That was the topic I couldn't go in detail about that. But the point is how this narrative of Christendom got secularized into the modern world. And now Descartes, for example, the first modern European philosopher, is going to say, bring the dualism between nature and the human, but without the theology. And will say, he won't say nature is a part of Satan, evil forces. He will say nature is wild, is savage. We need to control nature. We need to put it in its place. We need to exploit nature. Bacon too, not just Descartes, Bacon too. And so this dualism carried into the modern world coming from Christendom. You see, but now secularized because they're going to take the theological language, but they're going to keep the theological dualism. You see? And since this is very important to keep track of this is not the only one. There are many others narrative of Christendom are carried on into the present, okay? And we don't notice it. I prefer the intellectuals of the global south of different cosmologies who tell me I'm not a believer, but I'm Muslim, or I'm Aymara, or I'm whatever cosmology or spiritual practice. I say, I'm not a believer, but I am. And so I say, but how come you're not a believer? You define yourself as Muslim or what? Yeah, because I was born and raised in this culture and in this cosmology. So I cannot take that out of my head as a hat. It's there. You go to Westernized populations, not just the whites, but including among our people, and will say, I'm not a believer, therefore I'm beyond, God and Satan. I'm beyond that because I'm not a believer. Yeah, but you were born and raised in Christendom. So you cannot claim, just because you're not a believer, that you don't have that somewhere in the structure of your mind and your way of seeing the world, even if you're not a believer. So no human being can claim to be beyond cosmology. Every human being is within a cosmology. And the hegemonic cosmology of this system is Christendom, secularized as modernity. Okay? Nobody can claim I'm outside, No, just because you're not a believer, that you're atheist, doesn't mean that now you will be the worst of the Christians because you are super Christian without knowing it. Just thinking that because you're not a believer, now you are beyond cosmology. You were born and raised in Christendom, you cannot take that out of your head like a hat like this, okay? It's there. And we need to identify how it's there and what are the structures that are there informing the present and informing the structures of power we're living and facing, okay? So there were many human beings in Christendom classified on the side of nature because they were they were suspicious of evil forces, okay? So a lot of the problems of the modern world, you go back in history, you can find them there in the reforms of Constantine, Christendom, and everything that came after that, all the obscurantism that came out of that, okay? So, coming back to the paradigm, if capitalism, historical capitalism, the real existing capitalism, is genocidal, is because it's organized from within with the racist logics of modernity. Racism as an organizing principle of the political economy. It's not a superstructure, it's an organizing principle. Okay? Now, I want to clarify something here. This is a disagreement. I have many debates with Aníbal Quijano because I always told Aníbal that a lot of his ideas were coming from the black radical tradition, especially black Marxists in the Caribbean and the USA, and in Africa. Just to give you an example, in Latin America, we use the term neocolonialism. But nobody knows it's coming from Kwame Nkrumah. He was the first to coin this. Not only that, Kwame Nkrumah has a better, more profound and comprehensive understanding of neocolonialism than many dependentista theories in Latin America. Because for Kwame Nkrumah, the problem was not only economic, it was also epistemological, okay? So he was talking about decolonizing knowledge and coming up with a different perspective from the global south. Conscientionism, I'm not pronouncing that well in English, but that book I highly recommend. And someone pronounce it for me because my pronunciation is bad. Thank you, Conscientism, yes. That book I highly recommend. As a matter of fact, I have discussions here when we began, because if you know me, we organized together with Nelson and other colleagues, we began doing this decolonial summer schools here in South Africa, in UNISA. That was the first place we began. That's still going, okay? But there are now several decolonial summer schools like this one in Durban, other places. And so what I'm trying to say is that when I came here, I remember some of the people citing us, Latin Americans, okay, as sources for decolonial thinking. If I was here as a typical academic, I would say, oh, great, you're citing me, right? But I'm not a typical academic. I'm not interested in being cited. I'm interested in transforming the world. So I was telling, if you remember, Sandy, the brothers and sisters there, hey, look for the decolonial thinkers in Africa. That's what you need to be doing. We haven't thought Africa. So why are you citing us as the main source of decoloniality? There are decolonial thinkers. Biko, Aníbal Cabral, Kwame Nkrumah, we could go over the list. And we were saying, hey, look at these authors. Look at them profoundly. Not just extrapolating from Latin America. And many of them followed this advice and now are producing books along these lines, okay? Which is very important, I think, because the decolonial is here. Decolonial thinkers are here. That's how I would say Professor Ramón is decolonial, even though he won't like this. But anyway, here are the decolonial thinkers. We have one here, Professor Ramón. But anyway, so we need to take seriously the epistemologies of the South. We need to take seriously the cosmologies of the global South because they're giving us a different perspective from the cosmology of modernity that in the background is really Christendom, which is a theology of domination against nature, against human beings, against women, against everybody, okay? It's a civilization of death. So if capitalism is genocidal, it's because it's organized from within with the racist civilizational logic of modernity. If capitalism is feminicidal, it's because it's organized from within with Christendom patriarchy. Remember, there was no patriarchy in Africa or in the Americas before the European arrival. Look at the work of Oyeron Koyewumi, The Invention of Woman. Look at the work of Silvia Marcos in the Americas. Patriarchy came as part of the civilizational project of the European colonial expansion, okay? And so this goes against the logic of white feminists who claim that patriarchy has been there since Adam and Eve, okay? But anyway, it's I don't know how many thousand-year system, etc. Well, this is very Eurocentric. You're taking local European history as world history. Yeah, there were several thousand years of patriarchy in that part of the world we call Europe. But through Christendom, especially after the reforms of Christendom, but then, and that's why, they went after women and burned them alive because they were considered to be part of nature, witches. That's why they burned alive millions of women in that part of the world we call today Europe. Okay? It has different names. Okay? What we call today the Americas is Abya Yala. That's the Americas, what we call today. And there was Tawantinsuyo, there was Teotihuacan, there were indigenous names for different regions there. But the same thing in Africa. What we call today Africa, it had different names before the European arrival. Nobody was white in Europe, nobody was black in Africa, and nobody was Indian in the Americas before the European colonial expansion. These are modern categories of race that came later. Okay? And this is important to call attention to this. But this has historically specific construction and formulation. Okay? These are not there since Adam and Eve. That's an invention of the Eurocentric tradition. So, if capitalism is a communicide, the destruction of communities, is because it's organized from within with the civilizational logic of modernity of the individual, isolated individual from each other. So they destroy communities to create the individual isolated being so that people do not see each other in solidarity or in reciprocity. They see each other competing with each other. Okay? If capitalism is ecologicidal, it's because it's organized from within with the civilizational logic of modernity, of Cartesian dualism that is a secularization from the dualism of Christendom. That stupid idea where you think that nature is over there, humans here, okay, that nobody, no civilization in the world have had until modernity, until Christendom modernity, that stupid idea, it's a stupid idea. Think about it. To think that human life is here ontologically separated from other forms of life, non-human life, okay? And that they are ontologically separated. The moment you do that, you have there the rationality of destruction of life. Because every technology has cosmology. If you build technology under the cosmology of Christendom, Cartesian dualism, you're going to have there a technology that do not have the rationality of reproduction of life, but the rationality of destruction of life embedded in the technology. Because you have the stupid idea that human life continues insulated, isolated from other forms of life. So you could destroy anything around you and human life continues. Okay? Look at how, that's why I say decoloniality is not an option. Decoloniality is a necessity. Okay? It's a necessity. We don't decolonize from all this thing. We have the days counted in planet Earth. We have the days counted. Okay? Because this is leading the humanity and the world at large to a destructive civilization. It's a destructive civilization. It's a civilization of death. Death of millions of human beings, but the death of life in the broader non-anthropocentric sense of the word of life. So we need to decolonize from all this, and we need to embrace cosmologies that lead us out of it. Ubuntu, an example. You need to embrace Ubuntu. That's why I don't see the philosophy of Ubuntu separated from decoloniality. I see the two together because we need to decolonize from this SIT, but you need to bring something to do the critique and to move forward. And that something is these cosmologies of the Global South that are plural because they are different, but they share something, which is a non-dualistic understanding of the relationship between human beings and other forms of life. A non-dualistic understanding between human beings itself. Because I am, because you are, no? You can find that in Ubuntu, you can find that in the Mayas. In the Americas, the Maya have the same phrase. I am because we are. And the we is not anthropocentric. It includes all forms of life there. That we. Okay? So this is very important. And that's why I think we need to embrace alternative cosmologies, okay, of the Global South to fight back. And that's not something for the future. That's now. That's now. If we don't do it now, then what alternatives you're going to have to face this system of death we have in front of us, okay? If capitalism is spiritualized, that is the destruction of spirituality, is because it's organized from within with the Christendom logic of modernity as the superior only spirituality in town. The rest is inferior, superstitious, whatever, right? If capitalism is epistemicide, it's because it's organized from within with the epistemic racism of Eurocentrism that inferiorize other epistemologies and superiorize. That's why I was saying yesterday, it's dehumanization and hyperhumanization. It goes together. We cannot just focus on dehumanization. We need to see the other side of the coin, which is hyperhumanization of people, okay, that then become the superior beings, you see? And we need to disinflate this hyperhumanization, their identities. They have to be disinflated. They're too inflated, too ego inflated, okay? And we need to inflate our identities, our cosmologies, our knowledges. We need to inflate them because we've been dehumanized. So the path of decolonization in both sides is different. It cannot be the same. If you have people who have been hyperhumanized, who have, as a common sense, arrogance, sense of superiority, soberbia, ¿cómo se dice eso, Nelson? Soberbia, like, I don't know, pride, something like that. These people have to be disinflated. It's like a balloon, And for that, you need to disinflate all these identities, put them in their place. It had to go in both ways. We need to disinflate them, we need to inflate ourselves to be now here, you see? Right now we're here. You see what I mean? There's hyperinflated, hyperhumanized, and we're dehumanized. So we need to, that's why we need a strategic essentialism in our struggles of liberation. We need to come up with grand narratives. Cannot be that the grand narrative, the Eurocentric one, we don't have any grand narrative. Then they eat you up alive. They eat you up alive if you don't have an alternative grand narrative. So you need to have inflate our identities, our cosmologies, our knowledges, put it in their place. The dignity of our people, our knowledge, our way of being, etc. And then we need to disinflate the other side at the same time. You see what I'm trying to say? Because if you inflate yourself and they keep inflating like this, and you inflate, it's a circle like this. We need to disinflate them too. And there have to be also white people who understand this that have to also participate of this disinflation on their side and on their communities. See what I mean? We need to have that too. So the conversation has to be open to different, but the strategies of liberation and decolonization are not going to be the same. We cannot extrapolate one from the other, because over there you need a lot of anti-essentialism. A lot of anti-essentialism, because they have essentialized everything for them. We need to radical anti-essentialism with them. On our side, we need essentialism. We need to, every time, have you noticed every time we open our mouth, they say, hey, that's essentialism. They're doing it on purpose, so you shut your mouth, so that you feel like, oh, you know, and you go down. You see what I mean? No, that's a strategy of silencing you. We need a strategic essentialism. They are essentializing everything, and then every time you try to come up with your identity, perspective, knowledge, then, oh, you're essentialist. And they silence you. Follow me? So we need to do that with them. Radical anti-essentialism with them, but not with us. So the path and the methods of liberation cannot be the same, because we're coming from different locations and histories, you see? So capitalism, if you want to destroy this system, cannot be through the paradigm of 20th century of class struggle, destroy the economic system, and then the rest will be solved. That was the assumption of that paradigm. And it was demonstrated wrong. Okay? It was demonstrated wrong. Because what happened was that people start fighting capitalism as the priority, but then they left on the side all these other civilizational logics. And then what happened? You fight capitalism, and you organize yourself against capitalism in a racist way. You fight capitalism, and you organize yourself against capitalism in a Christian non-patriarchal way. You fight capitalism, and you organize yourself against capitalism, reproducing Eurocentrism. You fight capitalism, and you organize yourself reproducing Christian non-dualism through Cartesian dualism. You fight capitalism, and you reproduce the individual reductionist logic of modern citizens, etc. You end up reproducing everything you're fighting against. You see the point? Because you are now organizing yourself with the same logics that organize the system you want to defeat. Because the system you want to defeat is not economic, it's civilization. It's a civilization. And capitalism is the economic system of this civilization. This is what I've been trying to do for many years as a decolonial perspective of the paradigms of political economy, and as providing an alternative cartography of power that when we are in the struggles, we don't have the white left telling us what is the priority. You see the point? Because they're going to mislead us. They're going to take us to the wrong path. And they're going to reproduce again the problems of 20th century socialism that led where it led, with the workers uprising against the so-called worker state. Remember that? So we need now to come with a different paradigm. So we tell them what is the priority. We are the ones telling them what is the priority. Not they imposing on us, because then we don't have an alternative paradigm, and they have one, that they have built over more than 100 years, okay? We don't have really like an alternative paradigm. We're just building it in the process. And they come and eat you alive when you're in the struggles in the street, you see? You've been in those marches, and you see the bulletins, how do you call that? The pamphlets, you know, every time they show up there, you know, this white left, you know, with a pamphlet, and you get this paper, then you read them, you know, and they tell you the priority is this or that, and you, no, wait a minute, we have our priorities. It cannot be that we get rid of the white elites, and now we have the white left. Now you have a colonialism of the left, telling us what to do. You see the point? We need to have our own thinking about what is the system we're facing. This is a monster of 16, 20, 25 heads. And then we need to face this system, you know, with a different strategy than what has happened in the 20th century. Unfortunately, our brothers and sisters were fighting from the third world because at that moment, they didn't have the experience of what happened or the result that we have now. We can see back in history and we see where it led. At the moment, they didn't have that, so they embraced a lot of this Eurocentric thinking from the left and led us to a dead end. And I'm saying, again, this with humility, because if I was there, as a matter of fact, I was there. I was there in Puerto Rico in the 60s and 70s struggling with these paradigms. You know, so I was doing the same thing. And many of us would have been doing the same thing, many of us, at the time, you see? Because there was this dream about socialism, the Soviet Union becoming like an alternative, etc. And many people bought into this, okay? For good reasons, but they bought into this, but also for bad reasons, because they bought into the Eurocentric paradigm, but from the left, you see? And now we need to come up with a different perspective, okay, about this. So, this civilization, you have an international division of labor, core periphery, okay, under a logic of capitalist accumulation of world scale, domination, exploitation of the periphery of the world. You have an interstate system that is going to be there to make sure that the system of exploitation, domination, international division of labor will be produced and reproduced. So if there is a rebellion in the periphery, they will bring a commercial blockade, or they will bring a coup d'etat, like Professor Ramón was telling yesterday about the Congo and Patricio Lumumba. They will bring a military invasion, you know, with their troops. It depends on context, many things, but that's the interstate system. It comes in of imperial states and peripheral states. And they're going to mobilize it to put the periphery in its place, okay? Commercial blockade, sanctions, all this stuff that we've been seeing. Things are moving because now there is a split there of the multipolar world and the unipolar world. I'm going to come back to this. But the thing is the following. They have an interstate system, and the formulation of political authority is the nation state. And guess what? All the national liberation movements bought into that, onto the nation state, one nation, one identity, one people. That's the formula for disaster. Because it's, again, the universalism of the world, of the West. One that decides for you what is truth, what is reality, and what is good for you. Versalism. One that defines for you what is good, what is reality, and what is good for you. And you see that also on the left. You see that the same thing on the left. telling you what is on the Westernized left, Eurocentric left. And the Eurocentric left is not just the white left, okay? It's us. Us, people of our community that bought into the white left paradigm. So don't think that these are things over there. These are things that have colonized our minds. This has colonized our minds. And so we have black activists, indigenous activists, Latino activists, etc., people in Asia activists, with the Eurocentric paradigm of the left. Now they're critical to the imperial system of the right, but now they come out with the colonialism of the left. That's why I repeat, I find kind of work like Professor Ramón said, philosophy of Ubuntu, as fundamental to move beyond this. Not in the future, now. Because we need alternative cosmologies to face this. You see, that could criticize and provide an alternative now, today, not in the future, now. And that's why I see the complementarity. For me, decolonization is decolonizing ourselves as a radical critic of the system and all these structures of power, domination, and knowledge and forms of being, but also decolonization is building our own paradigms, our own vision. And that has to be a pluriverse. That cannot be a universe, because then we repeat again. We discover the wheel in history again, and we repeat the Western-centric paradigm. Now from a third world cosmology. You see what I mean? We cannot repeat that. We need to go to pluriverse of meanings, a pluriversal conversation, where now we're not imposing on each other our cosmological understandings. We now come to a conversation with brothers and sisters of the global south, okay, looking for alternatives to affirm life in planet Earth against the civilization of death. Okay? You know that the scientists have located what they call Anthropocene. They locate that in the 17th century on. That is the moment human beings enter in the cycle of reproduction of life to destroy life. And they say, you know, humans, the West love to claim its achievements as great from them. Oh, we put a man in the moon, right? But their disasters, then they become humanist. They become humanist. Oh, the human, we're destroying life. No, human beings have been in planet Earth for how many thousands of years? And there have never been a civilization as destructive of life as this one. So we shouldn't talk about Anthropocene. Then comes the white left and say, the Westernized left, that's the best definition instead of white left, because there are many people who are non-white that follow the Westernized left paradigm, okay? Then come the Westernized left and say, no, it's capitalocene. I say, no, I'm sorry. This is the Westernizing. Because we're talking about civilization, organize the economic system in a certain way that is destructive of life. So that civilization is the causation of the destruction of life that we have in the past 400 years. If you notice, that's 17th century, the moment the scientists identify, is the moment of what? The emergence of Cartesian dualism. That's the moment. And from then on, we have production of technology with the rationality of destruction of life, because this technology has the cosmology of Cartesian dualism. And we destroy all the other heuristic, holistic concepts that have there the rationality of reproduction of life, because all these other holistic concepts from the global south, okay, have there the notion that life, human life, coexists with other form of life, and it's this interdependence, equilibrium, and balance that reproduces life. And if one species take over other species, it's going to destroy life. As simple as that. So they have a common sense of this balance, and that's why human beings have been for thousands of years on planet Earth without destroying life. The reason we are in a system destructive of life is because we are in a civilization of death that have all this logic that I mentioned already that organizes capitalism as an economic system of this civilization in a destructive way. And this is the dehumanization that is coming from the secularization, is coming from Christendom as a theology of domination, secularizing to modernity, and then through colonialism, building a capitalist system with the logic, civilizational logics, okay, that organizes the system we live in a destructive way. That's why this system has killed millions and millions of human beings. We see the genocides every day. Look at Gaza today. That's why I'm wearing this. Please, the video, okay? I want to remind everybody that there is a genocide going on in Gaza. But listen, please. This system began its expansion. I always say this is something we forget. The first moment of the European colonial expansion was the Christendom monarchy, Castilian monarchy, Christendom Castilian monarchy, in its expansion against Al-Andalus, that part of Islamic civilization in the south of Iberian Peninsula. That was the first moment. Now, I'm going back there because, not for nostalgia, because I have some Muslim brothers and sisters look at that moment as in nostalgic way because there was a conviviality of Christian, Jews, Muslims at that time, living together, etc. There was a conviviality at that moment. So they look at the destruction of Al-Andalus as in a nostalgic way. I'm not going there for nostalgia. I'm going there because the methods of conquest that they rehearsed there were the methods of conquest that will carry on to the rest of the world. So you want to know where modern settler colonialism began? Go and study the conquest of Al-Andalus. They went there like they went in Palestine. So you could see settler colonialism all the way from the conquest of Al-Andalus till Palestine, passing through South Africa, passing through Zimbabwe, passing through North America, Canada, USA, passing through Argentina, Chile, passing through Australia, New Zealand. This form of colonialism, called settler colonialism, is associated with genocide because the colonizer have no interest in the exploitation of the labor of the people they are colonizing. They want to get rid of them because they're coming with their families to take over. And then you have the exploitation colonialism, which is a colonialism where they are interested in enslaving, in doing, in the exploitation of the labor. Many times, these two forms of colonialism coexist in the same place. So in one region, they practice settler colonialism, in the other one, they practice exploitation colonialism. So that's very complex. You cannot see this as separated. But there are some countries where one form dominated over the other. Settler colonialism dominated over the exploitation of labor, exploitation colonialism. You see what I'm trying to say? In exploitation colonialism, the colonizer have an interest in the exploitation of labor, and indirectly they practice genocide in the sense that they put you to work long hours a day, enslave you, torture you, whatever, and then you die. Premature death, right? That's a form of genocide. In the other one is immediate genocide. Immediate genocide. They get rid of you immediately because they want the land, they want your resources, they want even your homes, okay? And that's what happened in Palestine. Where is that coming from? You could go back to the conquest of Al-Andalus, and they've been doing that for the past 500 years, okay? But now they're modern weapons. Now there are all these iPhones and stuff. Now we're seeing, for the first time in history, a genocide live, as it's happening. There, okay? And this is genocide, okay? I would like to see a more stronger statement from UCT and from other universities, to take the example of the government of South Africa, okay? A more strong statement about the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza today. I would like to see that. Take the example of your own government, who's taken Israel to the International Court for crimes against humanity. It's an example to the world. With all the critiques we might have, and we have, of the present government of South Africa, this time we need to praise what they're doing now, okay? We need to support this, because the backlash of the forces behind this are going to be big, okay? And especially the foreign minister, what's her name? This sister is very courageous, because she's facing big power structures, okay? In doing what she's doing. And we need to back her up in what she's doing. This sister is taking a courageous stand, okay? Very courageous. And I wish UCT could take that example, okay? I wish other universities in South Africa could take the example of this sister, okay? Now, coming back to the discussion, this civilization that I named the structures of power, all of that, okay? So I was talking about the concept of the nation state, right? Nation state is a problematic concept. We need to move to the indigenous people in the Americas, in Abya Yala, has been using the term plurinational states to decolonize the nation state, using pluriverse, using plurinational as a way, like this is one state and we are all these nations coexisting inside the state, and there have to be a different juridical system, different self-determination, sovereignty for the different nations coexisting inside the state. That's the concept. It's not liberal multiculturalism. Liberal multiculturalism, don't confuse it, please, because this is very confusing. And in South Africa, my God, this is all over the place. Liberal multiculturalism is, okay, I give you money, I give you crumbs for you to dance and jump in your carnival, but don't question who rules here. That's liberal multiculturalism. I recognize your identity in a superficial way. I give you crumbs for you to dance and jump in your carnival, but don't question who rules here. So I keep you happy, giving you crumbs, but you stay in your place. Don't even think about it. To move beyond your place or to question the power structure. That's liberal multiculturalism. Okay? It's a form of white supremacy. We cannot forget this. Okay? Now, plurinational structures, decolonizing the nation state with plurinational states is different. It's a different concept. Okay? And it's being developed and changed in constitutions in several countries in South America, okay, with this concept of indigenous movements there, okay? And of course, in Africa, you have your own ways of addressing this, but there has to be a way to break away from this concept of nation state that is creating more problems than solutions. It's embedded in the system of exclusion of this civilization. You see? Now, racism, the West and the rest, that's another structure of domination that you have in the system. But racism is not just one more form of domination of this civilization. It's a major organizing principle of everything. So I'm not saying there are all these multiple hierarchies like this in columns. They are entangled. I use the term heterarchies, multiple hierarchies entangled. And we need to historicize this because the entanglement of the hierarchies, of the 16 hierarchies I mentioned, is not going to be the same, okay, in South Africa or in Bolivia or in Lebanon or in other places. You see, the entanglement of the hierarchy is different because there are different histories, different epistemologies, cosmologies, different resistance struggles, different. So we need to historicize these things. We cannot go a priori like the Marxists used to do, or the determination of the economy in the last instant, they will find that everywhere. No, we need to go with an open mind, with a cartography of power, but see, historicizing how they're entangled. Because they're not like this. I'm doing this for pedagogical purposes, but that's not in reality how it happens. It's always entangled in complex ways. And the entanglement of South Africa is not the entanglement of Argentina or China or other places, okay? And then you have a patriarchal system where for the first time in history, you have a patriarchal system where a small number of women have more resources, more privilege than the majority of males in the world. Did you hear what I said? We have a patriarchal system. For white feminists, I have a lot of discussion about this because they don't get this one. We have, for the first time in world history, a patriarchal system where a minority of women have more resources, more power than the majority of the male in the world. You cannot understand this without looking at the entanglement between race and gender. So we need to constantly do the entanglement here to understand how these things work. They don't work like this in columns. They work in an entangled way to understand the complexity of what we're talking about. The same thing with sexual domination. In sexual domination, we have the same problem. You have a minority of LGTB that have more resources, more power, more than the majority of heterosexuals in the world. That's why there's something called gay imperialism. Have you heard this? Okay. So, and of course, the forms of liberation of white LGTB cannot be the same as the strategy of liberation of LGTB in communities racialized are not the same as the strategy of liberation. And the same for women. That's why there is Islamic feminists, there is African feminists, Ubuntu feminists, that's why there is Aymara feminists. There is a multiplicity of feminisms to account for the historical experience of different women in the world and to bring in different strategies of liberation that cannot be imported from the white woman in Paris, London, or New York. Okay? So this is very important. And there you have the pluriverse inside feminism. But the white feminists, especially the imperialist white feminists, they hate this. They think there is only one feminism. It's theirs, and if you don't follow it, then you're not a feminist. They disqualify you. Because they don't like epistemic diversity inside feminism. They don't want that. They want Eurocentric thinking prevailing in their feminism. They want to be equal to the white imperial men. Hillary Clinton. You see, they want to be equal there. And that's a problematic goal, okay? Now, you have also structures of aesthetics in the system I'm describing here. The concept of beautiness and good taste is this Western concept considered there is an aesthetic racism. The superior ways of good taste and beautiness. The other one are the savages, the barbarians, the inferior ways. You see, there is also aesthetic racism. That's why racism and the racial domination is not just one more hierarchy of these 16 hierarchies. Is that racism is at the foundation of the system from day one and organizes the other forms of domination in a different way. So it's not one more. It's very important here. So it cut across all the others and organizes them in very complex ways. Okay? It's the problem of dehumanization that goes along all these hierarchies in aesthetics, in knowledge, Eurocentric structures dominating. That's another hierarchy of the system. Eurocentric knowledge superior over the rest. Languages, another hierarchy. European languages are superior and the other languages inferior to European languages. You have 90% of scientific journals written in English, German, and French. Language that most of humanity do not speak nor read. That's a coloniality of language. Okay? You have the ecological structures, places of the world that are the eco-fascist paradises, and places of the world that are the garbage of the world. Okay? So I can go on and on. I'm not going to continue with the 16 hierarchy. It's going to be too long. Let me say now the following. Please pay attention to this. Because now comes the politics. Many decolonial, maybe what Nelson is calling light decoloniality, they talk about this civilization in an abstract way. And they identify all of this, and they are with you with all of that, except the moment I tell them these hierarchies of power, please pay attention, these hierarchies of power are materialized in an imperialist system, okay, that is enforcing this across the world. In an imperialist system. So you cannot delink this civilization from the imperialist system. Because there are structures of domination in an imperialist Western-centric system in the world through this modern colonial system, through this European colonial expansion, are the ones materializing this civilization of death at a world scale. So you cannot delink the civilizational critique from the anti-imperialist critique and struggle. We need to put the two together. If we are one thing as decolonial, first and before anything else is anti-imperialist. You cannot be decolonial and be pro-imperialist. You have to be first and before anything else anti-imperialist. Now, I thought that by saying decolonial, it was enough for people to understand that we're fighting this civilization of death that is materialized in an imperialist system. And that we are anti-imperialist, but we need a new anti-imperialism in the 21st century. And that anti-imperialism have to overcome the problems of anti-imperialism in the 20th century that was based on the paradigm I've been criticizing here. We need to bring in all this cartography of power in the new imperialism of the 21st century. I wrote a book in Spanish dedicated to this discussion. It just came out a year ago. In Spanish language, unfortunately, it's not in English, but I wrote a full book about this question. Okay, what is it that, the new anti-imperialism of the 21st century should look like? Okay? Doing all these critiques I mentioned to you in more in-depth, all these things I just mentioned is in that book more developed and more in-depth. Here I'm going very fast. So, why I felt compelled to do this, I will tell you why. Because among the decolonial networks in Latin America, and please pay attention to this, among the decolonial networks, people you're reading as authorities in decoloniality, there was a breaking point in the struggle in Venezuela. In Venezuela, in the summer of 2017, and I was there on the ground, I can testify this, the empire put paramilitary people in the streets to kill people, to then say internationally it is Maduro and the Bolivarian government killing the opposition. Fake news. And that's what you were reading in the news here. That Maduro and the Bolivarian government, I was there on the ground, and the Chavistas were afraid of going to the streets. It was the paramilitary of the empire in the streets killing people. Chavista friend of mine, they were afraid of going to the streets. Because Maduro, which I keep saying should have gained the Nobel Peace Prize, avoided a bloody civil war. He gave instruction to the army and to the police, and he told me, I spoke with him, he told me I was doing this every day to remind them, any soldier or police who shoot back is going to be in jail. We cannot shoot back. They're shooting at us, let them there, let's give a political solution to this. Let's not go into a civil war, which is what happened with Assad in Syria. They were doing the same thing in Syria, and Assad responded in a brutal way, and what happened? They destroyed Syria. Maduro said, no, we are not going that way. That's what they want. They want us to go into a bloody fight here and destroy the country and justify an intervention, that kind of thing. Let's not shoot back. So they were receiving bullets and they were not shooting back. The people who were in jail those days were soldiers and people in the army who shoot back. That you don't get that information in the press. What you get in the fake news press, in the imperial press, is the fake news. And guess what? Our colleagues from the decoloniality network, modernity coloniality, in the middle of this, came out with a document. This is unknown here because these are debates in Latin America. I won't be talking about this if it was not because I was invited to discuss this here because it's unknown here. And in Latin America, I don't discuss that anymore because that's over, okay? That debate is over. But what happened was that colleagues of us, Quijano, Mignolo, Catherine Welsh, very well-known decolonial thinkers with good contributions. They wrote a document, Edgardo Lander. They wrote a document and got tons of signatures from the pseudo-left of Latin America, okay? Repeating the thesis of the empire against Venezuela in the middle of killings in the street from the empire. Can you imagine? No. I said, no way. I went out in public to debate them. I wrote a counter document together with Venezuelan brothers and sisters and got signature against them. And Dussel, Enrique Dussel, who passed away a few months ago, he came out with a video. And we got signature from other people in the decolonial network who we keep being anti-imperialists. I mean, we never lose sight of that. Why they fell so low, that's a long discussion. I'm not going to go there, but just to say, Mignolo, I mentioned in the names, just you know what happened. There were all this debate going on because they were siding in the middle of something like that. I mean, I have critiques to Venezuela. We have debates in Venezuela. Hugo Chavez and Maduro are the first one to tell you There's no revolution without contestation. Like you were saying yesterday. There have to be contestation, there have to be critiques, there have to be debates. I have a decolonial school there for several years now, and we are debating the problems of the revolution. Critiques, all that's no problem. But all the critiques are with, like Fidel Castro said, everything within the revolution, nothing against the revolution. That was a speech he gave in 1963. All the critiques inside the revolution, they are welcome. Critiques against the revolution, they're not accepted. We want to improve, so we need the critiques. Todo dentro de la revolución, nada contra la revolución. That was the slogan. Everything within the revolution, nothing against the revolution. And so we have a summer school discussing all these things, the problems of the Bolivarian revolution. It's not as if we are blind or we are blind followers or things like this. It's that there is a red line that is political between imperialism and the struggle for liberation. You cannot lose sight of this. So suddenly, I remember I was using the term decolonial colonials as an euphemistic term. I was naming them as decolonial colonials. And Dussel, who was always, and you know that, Nelson, very, how can I say, very cautious, he will debate things in a cautious way, in a respectful way, all that. He said to me, Ramon, what the hell you're saying? These people were in the decolonial bus. They step out of the bus, cross the street to the sidewalk, and start shooting this way. These people, and you cannot say decolonial, colonial. They are colonial. They're pro-imperialists. Please don't say that. Dussel. He was like so outrageous about what was happening that Dussel lost his temper with this. And he was calling me and saying, don't say decolonial, colonial. They don't even have the merit to say that. These people are now shooting this way. They took the side of the empire in the middle of a civil war, orchestrated by the empire. And you know, that summer, Maduro gave a political solution to the problem. He organized a constitutional assembly, a new constitutional assembly, and they got more votes than the votes he got as a president. So next day, the paramilitaries were gone from the streets because the opposition got divided. There were people in the opposition saying, well, if they're getting more votes than the votes he got as president, this is not working. And so he gave a political solution without shooting a single bullet and went back to a peaceful situation. But it took like 6 months of bloody, and these people were in the streets. We knew where they were. They were standing there with their guns. Black Venezuelans. Please, listen to this. If you have any doubt about the fascism of these people and the racism of the opposition there, together with empire, they were burning alive Chavista black people. So they will be standing in a corner with their weapons. If they saw a black guy or a black woman who happened to be Chavista, they will burn them there, alive. Okay? This is U.S. empire, please. This is imperialism in alliance with the oligarchy of the country, okay? But these things were happening. And in the middle of this, you have the decolonials writing a document. I mean, come on. For me, that was the end. For me, that was the end, honestly. For me, that was a red line there. I couldn't continue working with these people. Okay? I have to say honestly. For me, it was too much, especially I was involved in Venezuela. I was already activist there. I was already working with them. Okay? And then this happened. I was like, oh my God, this is, so we have no other choice than coming out in public and putting a red line, because if I stay quiet to protect my colleagues, we'll be associated with this craziness. And the decolonial project has to keep its route forward and not be corrupted in this way. And do you know what is happening today? We have the intersectional imperialism now. Have you seen this? The US empire, in a perverse way, now you go to the embassies, they have their money for feminists, money for anti-racists, money for ecologists, money at least in Latin America, that's the case. I don't know here, I haven't seen the webpage of the US Embassy here. But they have it too. Okay, so they come up with intersectional imperialism. They're now taking the concept of black feminists, that they were always anti-imperialist. Angela Davis was always anti-imperialist. Okay? Now they're taking this concept in a perverse way and using it to now fund the opposition they want. So they create the problem, and now they produce the opposition to the problem. And it's an opposition domesticated. You see? It's domesticated. And now they're funding, and then you have the coup d'etat against Evo Morales in Bolivia. By the way, the same people that I'm denouncing here of the decolonial networks that you guys are reading as authorities, I have to say the following to clarify. The Eurocentric people, they read Heidegger, who was a fascist, Nazi. And they keep reading Heidegger, okay? So I'm not saying throw to the garbage everything they wrote. Let's read whatever is useful and use it, okay? I'm not saying now, so if they read Heidegger, we could read Quijano, we could read all these people, okay, have no problem. But with a consciousness that there are problems there, theoretical problems, that is leading them over there to take these positions. I don't have time to develop that, but I have videos in Spanish explaining theoretically how the theory they're formulating from Decolonial is leading them to go that way, okay? So I have videos on that, because there is a problem in the theoretical formulation, okay? In some of them, the issue of imperialism do not appear. Okay? It doesn't show. They delink civilizational critique of modernity and all of that from imperialism. You cannot delink this. Okay? They have a vision of imperialism that is as if it was over there, and that whatever happened inside Latin American countries is more something internal, and the imperialism is something. No, imperialism is there inside the countries. Okay? Organized, okay, etc. So you cannot. So, and of course, before that, I also had a debate with Quijano on the question of the origins of the concept of coloniality. And I've written about this in Spanish. Where is the idea of race as an organizing principle of capital accumulation and of modern form of domination coming from? From the black radical tradition. But they don't use coloniality. They use other terms to name this. But you could see the idea of coloniality in W.B. Du Bois. You could see in Harry Haywood with the formulation of internal colonialism. That is not the same as González Casanova or Stavenhagen. When you read Harry Haywood in the 1920s, a black communist activist in the 1920s, he has a formulation of internal colonialism that was the articulation of race and class, and race as organizing principle of the political economy. That was there very clearly. A black American activist. You have the formulation of Cedric Robinson, racial capitalism. There are different ways. In Fanon, when he said in the colonies, in his debate with the Eurocentric Marxists, he was saying in the colonies, racism is infrastructure. It's another way of saying it's an organizing principle. It's not a superstructure, something derivative, So you could see different formulations. I have no problem if Quijano would have come and say, there are all this body of work before me. I'm departing from there to develop this concept this idea, I call it coloniality, what other people call it. I have no problem with that. I have a problem when in the name of coloniality, of decolonization, of knowledge, you're now doing what white social scientists have been doing all along, which is what? Epistemic extractivism. So you're taking this and carry on with this without acknowledging where things were coming from. If you remember, Nelson, there were meetings where we were taking aback because he was even taking ideas from people in the same network and were in the room sitting there, and he would put it there as if it was already in his theory. I don't know if you remember those moments. And we were like, wait a minute, but it was this person who produced this concept. And of course, he opposed the concept of coloniality of being. And he came with this Eurocentric Marxist position saying, he opposed the concept of coloniality of being that Nelson has developed and saying, no, this is idealism. This is not materialism. You remember those debates. Okay. The problem I saw was that there was a colonial ethos there of taking all these ideas, putting it in his paradigm, and not acknowledging where they were coming from. And if you do that with black thinkers, you're just, in the name of decoloniality, you're just continuing with the same practices of the white supremacist Eurocentric academics. All, especially the French, they have a skeleton in the closet. All these social scientists from Europe, and I can tell you, I can go on and on about this. I will stop here just to alert you. They have a skeleton in the closet. What I mean by that, they took their idea, including Foucault, from people in the global south who have developed the same concept they're developing further. You know, they're taking from there and not acknowledging where they took it. Okay, so behind every one of these folks, especially the French, they're the worst. Okay, the French academics, they're the worst. Okay, it's coming from there. So, world system theory. Everybody attributes that to Wallenstein. Wallenstein is on record himself for his credit and has said world system theory, political economic world system, and not the founder is Oliver Cox, a black intellectual thinker from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. Oliver Cox, C-O-X. He has 4 volumes of the world system in the 1940s and 50s of last century. Okay? Let me see how I go now. So the origins of the theory of world system theory is a black Marxist. The concept of internal colonialism that is attributed to many folks in here, Harold Walt, in the case of the Abiyala, you have González Casanova and others, white academics in Mexico, Stabenhagen. They attribute this concept to white academics. No, it's the black radical tradition. Internal colonialism was developed by Harry Haywood, W. B. Du Bois, and so on. Okay? Since 1920s of last century. Okay? Or the concept of coloniality of power, okay, is coming from the black radical tradition, as I said before. It's not coming from Quijano. Quijano learned this at Binghamton. I was there at Binghamton when all this stuff was going on. Honestly, it took me a while to open my eyes about this because I thought he was acknowledging these things. But then, after a while, after a period of relationship with him, I started seeing the things he was doing. I was shocked and had discussions with him. And I would be saying, why are you not citing in discussions, personal, face to face? Why are you not citing indigenous thinkers who have been talking about coloniality using other terms in the Andean region where you're coming from? Or the black radical tradition, which he knew, and I knew for a fact, at SUNY Binghamton, he was spending 6 weeks a year teaching there for 30 years, and Cedric Robinson was a professor there, the guy who coined racial capitalism. He was a professor, and the students will go to his courses. I will sit in the course of Quijano, even though I was a professor, I will sit there. And the students of Cedric will go to the room there, to the classroom, and confront Quijano with all this stuff. Okay? So I'm a witness of this. At the beginning, I thought that he acknowledged that there was no. But then, when you start seeing the development of his writings, conversations with him, his attitudes, all of that, I start noticing there's a serious fundamental problem here, because suddenly you have now, we as decolonial thinkers, suddenly we are now in a position that we're like, bypassing the black radical tradition. I made a section of Nelson and other people who were already working with Fanon, Sylvia Winter, Caribbean thinker within the network, the black radical tradition. But there were other people there that were not going in that route, that were in a sense replacing. That's the way I see it. And I took distance from that and I wrote an article about that. Not one, several articles on this question. And something I haven't written, I haven't said in public, Nelson, I'm going to say for the first time here, coloniality, even the word is not from Quijano. The word is from Wallenstein. And in that essay of Quijano and Wallenstein, all the section on coloniality was written by Wallenstein. I'm going to publish on this soon. I have all the evidence. I discussed with Wallenstein the issue. And all the section coloniality of that essay is coming from Wallenstein. All the other section was an article of Quijano in 1988. All this other one was an article of Wallenstein that he wrote in 1990, 2 years before. So here comes Minolo with kind of a geographical reductionism, and he comes up and say, the concept of coloniality is Quijano, because it cannot be that a white man like Wallenstein could have said that. But Wallenstein is not just a white man, it's a man that has been highly influenced by the black radical tradition of Africa and in the US. And it's something he acknowledged publicly, that Oliver Cox, Kwame Nkrumah, Walter Rodney, etc., who, by the way, many of them were there as faculty in Binghamton. And in the Braudel Center, it was full of Africans. That's why, African thinkers. And so the word colonial, even the word was coming, who put this forward, because if you notice, Quijano never said anything in public about that. But it was Minolo who said, it cannot be, obviously, he said, well, Wallenstein is a guy from the north, he's a white guy, he cannot produce this concept of coloniality, it had to be Quijano. And that's how, since then, we assume that that essay, which is a foundational essay, is the first one where you have the concept of coloniality understood in relation to racial heritage. Before that, it was understood more in terms of Eurocentrism critique to epistemological critique. But where the question of race and ethnicity comes in is in that essay in 1992 together. And so there is a problem of the decoloniality network of understanding who said what. Okay? But I have the articles of both to show who wrote what, because this is like a Frankenstein of two articles of Wallenstein and Quijano. And I'm going to publish something about this very soon. But anyway, that's a story I don't want to go into now. But to finish, I think we need to to be, look, in the past, I said decoloniality, I assume by saying decoloniality, that's it, everybody understands I'm anti-imperialist. After what happened, is, look, in the coup d'etat in Evo Morales, these same folks start criticizing Evo Morales, indigenous president, in the middle of a coup d'etat. And not only that, some of them start saying there's no coup d'etat, this is a rebellion against a bad government. Okay? Rita Segato, Pusikanki, Siveci, etc. Okay? Tapia, with Tapia, I can mention a long list of names who were saying that. And this is a coup d'etat like 1492. They were coming with the Bible and the weapons. Okay? That's how it happened. And they were massacring indigenous people. And then you have the decolonials saying this is a rebellion. This is not a coup d'etat. Okay? In the middle of a coup d'etat. Those same people were the ones who also signed a document in January, in the summer of 2017, I already explained, but also in January 2019, when Guaidó, remember Guaidó, that guy who came to the plaza supported by Trump and declared himself president of Venezuela? They wrote another document there, signed by the same folks, decolonial folks. Not only that, they meet, the people who wrote the document met with Guaidó right there, January 2019, in the moment this was happening. They met with Guaidó. And guess what? There's a photo sitting next to him in this meeting, the people who wrote this document. Okay? Boaventura Sosa Santos, he signed all these documents, Boaventura. You know, for me, it was like a deception to see all these people falling into this trap. And then I saw when they came out of the meeting with Guaidó in a press conference, you know what they said? Guaidó is more legitimate, democratically speaking, than Maduro. You know who is Guaidó, no? It's this guy who went to a plaza supported by Trump and declared himself president of Venezuela without being elected. And stole everything from Venezuela after that. Okay? Stole everything. Billions of dollars with a B. Okay? Billions of dollars. And then these people want to meet with this guy? And then come out and say he's legitimately democratic, more legitimate than Maduro? I'm sorry. I cannot go with that one. You know, this is too much. And so, so I'm saying this because now I don't call myself anymore decolonial, and that's it. I call myself now, even though it's redundant, decolonial anti-imperialist. I use this term because now you cannot take for granted that you say decolonial people and that you're anti-imperialist. You see, and for me, the imperialist system is this civilization system that is producing death. You see, you have to understand that this is one and the same thing, that they are not linked like this. Okay? And to finish, I think that's sort of what I get from Nelson when he's talking about combative decoloniality, because now there is life forms of decoloniality, and even though before, when we say decoloniality, we assume everybody is committed to the transformation of the world, and now we need to put this thing there because not everybody who say they're decolonial, they're really committed to the transformation of the world. So I read Nelson saying combative decoloniality as a way to put something there, so to make a distinction with versions of decoloniality that are decadent. Thank you. All the questions you want. I don't care.
Okay, a big round of applause. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to give you just like a moment, like 10 20 seconds just to like digest and think about your question. Not your lecture, not your presentation, your question. Okay, can I take one hand? And remember, sir, keep it brief, not a lecture, a question.
Thank you very much for your perspective. I'm referring to the changing order by state level.
Could you talk louder, please?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, talk louder, please.
Okay, so I'm referring to the book, The World's Changing Order by Ray Dalio, where he explains that since we have conflict and we have
Who is the author of that book?
Ray Dalio,
Ray Elliott. Okay.
where he explains that because we have cycles of conflict and peace and how fragmentation the world is because we have a finite amount of human characteristics. So people born with the same personalities will repeat throughout history. As a result of that, you mentioned, we have war in Russia and Gaza and Palestinians, and we have essentially a fragmented world. Is there a way that human beings can sort of overcome that ourselves, or are we sort of fixed in this predetermined way, and maybe we need to invent AI to take over us
Two.
basically follow the instructions of AIs and live in
I understand the question. Yes, yeah.
Okay. Prof, you want to take that question?
Yeah, well, let me say something. I mean, Ellen has also a question.
Yes, but can you answer
Okay.
this question?
Okay, so this question is, I want to say the following. There's a section I couldn't discuss here for lack of time, which is what are we facing today? We're facing two Western elites fighting for how to keep their privilege on top. Two Westernized white imperialist elites. You have on the one hand the traditional extreme right, such as Trump, such as Marine Le Pen, and others that are literally fascists, okay, racist, fascists, all of this. That's one side of the elites. There are nationalists, let's call them nationalist imperialists, racists, and then you have the globalists from Davos, okay? The globalists from Davos, that's why I'm going to now, I'm talking about this guy Ray Diallo, that you're citing, okay? So these people from Davos, and I want to call attention to this, please pay attention because they're very confusing.
Yes.
Because these people from Davos, they have an agenda that is as fascist, as genocidal as Trump and Marine Le Pen. But this is what they do, look at this. And this was said by Wallenstein in the 1980s. He was saying, in the 21st century, we're going to see a bifurcation of the system because this system is going to collapse. And what is going to happen is the same thing that happened in the transition from feudalism to the system in the 15th century, where the top elites of the feudal aristocracy, they saw this is collapsing, I have to save my skin here, and they went global with the European colonial expansion and founded global countries, and this Western-centric system that we've been describing. It's the same families that is capitalism did not emerge, like Weber would say or Marx would say, as part of the class struggle internal to Europe. It emerged out of the European feudal aristocracy producing a new system where they stay alive and on top, you see, and they don't collapse with the feudal system. So the same families that were the feudal aristocracy are the same families of the financial capitalism of the 16th century, okay, in the European colonial expansion. The same families. So it's not an internal class struggle. It's the same family producing a new system to save their, Okay, so now he said, we're going to face something similar. There are going to be elites of this system that they see this collapsing and they want to save their privilege, their white privilege, their economic privilege, all of this in the face of the collapse of the system. So they want to create a new historical system worse than this one. The feudal aristocracy created a system worse than what they had before. This is going to be worse than the system we're seeing so far. Because these people are taking new technologies, okay, and this is what they propose. They want to dissolve all the governments of the world and create a world government where they have, through new technologies, a full control over human beings. They're talking about superhumanism? No, transhumanism. Transhumanism, which is let's leave behind the human, let's roboticize the human. Let's make humans robots. Put a chip here, okay, and they will have full control over what you think, what you want, what you like, etc. Okay? More than the algorithms that you have today. But now the chip will be in your head. Okay? They want to robotize everything, including human beings, with new technologies. They say, so when you listen to them, they look progressive. But they say, this system has too much inequalities. We need to create something new. Okay? But that something new is what some people are calling techno-feudalism, using these digital platforms as the platform on a new historical system that functions similar to feudalism but at a global level, okay? With rents to a few minority and having everybody robotized below, okay? Then they talk about ecological crisis. You say, oh, these people are progressive. They're recognizing the ecological crisis. No. Do you know what they're saying? I call them eco-Malthusians. You remember Malthus? Malthus, the economy of the 19th century in England, who said poverty and unemployment is due to too much demography, too much human beings. We need to reduce demography. Remember that British guy? Now they are eco-Malthusians. They don't care about poverty and unemployment. They are now saying the ecological crisis of the world, okay, is because there are too many human beings. And now they're on record, listen to the videos of Bill Gates and all these people, the globalists in Davos, they're on record saying there are 8 billion human beings. We need to reduce this to 2 million. That's the only way we can survive. So there are eco-Malthusians. Genocidal projects that are now in our noses. They say only 2 billion people can make this planet work. We need to reduce 6 billion people who are in excess. Okay? So now we're facing, when you look at their agenda, they look very progressive, but in fact, when you look at their solutions, they are really global genocidal nightmares. Okay? To check their meeting in January 2021 called the New Reset. This is not conspiracy theory, please.
No, it's not.
It is not. These people are doing this as we talk, okay? And they're moving forward very fast. There are executives of companies such as Google and others have come out in public, have resigned from the position, and denounced what these people are moving towards. I don't know if you've seen that in the last year. Some of these high executives resigning and going in public to denounce this and saying, all this thing about roboticizing human beings, all this stuff, it's not there as a futuristic thing in 100 years. No, it's right now. It's there. And they've been denouncing it. So I'm not talking about conspiracy, I'm talking about things that are happening. And these people are discussing this in public as if nothing. So what you're seeing in Gaza, pay attention, that's coming. That could be coming if we don't stop it. That will be coming everywhere because these people are taking Gaza as a laboratory of what they want to do in many other parts of the world. Okay? And that's why it's televised, it's putting in your face and saying to the world, okay, you do whatever now. Okay, what are you going to do now? You see? So we are all responsible because now we all know. Nobody can say, oh, I didn't know about it. I didn't know there was a genocide happening. No, everybody can see it. So we are all responsible. And the point is that if we don't stop it, these people are going all the way because this is a laboratory of the globalists, okay? About this project of human extermination that they've been calling for. So be careful, okay? I don't want to go into COVID, okay? Because that's another one, and I don't want this video to be censored, okay? But I can tell you something. In U.S. Congress, in the hearings, public hearings of December 2021, the discussion was not the Chinese story, but the gringo story, the American story, that Chinese eat bats. That's not the discussion in Congress anymore. You know what's the discussion in Congress? Was this purposely escaped the laboratory in Wuhan? Or was this an accident? That was a discussion in Congress. I sat down and saw those hearings, and all the senators were confronting this guy, what's his name? The Italian guy in charge of the Fauci. Confronting Fauci, okay? And Fauci tried to escape. He couldn't escape because they were very well informed. And then, a few months later, the Russians entered Ukraine, and they found 43 laboratories, like the one in Wuhan, where since 2018, they were using and experimenting with COVID virus from bats as a weapon of mass destruction of biological warfare. Okay? And those documents the Russians put here in the Security, how do you call that? Of the United Nations, the Security Council of the United Nations, for them to make a study about these documents. Because they want to do it themselves. They say, oh, the Russians invented. No, here are the documents of the Pentagon. By the way, the son of Biden is implied in this laboratory, in the business of this stuff. And they put it there, and you know what? Nothing happened. Why? Because of the veto of the USA in the United Nations. Like the veto of USA against the genocide in Gaza. Okay? So I'm sorry that I have to go longer in answering this, but we need to pay attention to what is coming in the next few years. It's not a thing for 20 years, it's happening as we talk, okay? And both elites are racist, genocidal, but they have different agendas. One want to say capitalism from the capitalists, the fascists, traditional fascists, and these other fascists, they want to create a new system worse than this one. So be careful with the rhetoric because they are very, especially the globalists, they sound leftist, progressive. They're even for LGBT, women's rights, etc. But you know why? Because they want to control population growth and all that stuff. Okay? And so it's not for the same reason we're pro-LGBT and pro-women. Right? They have a different agenda, and you need to be careful because they hide themselves on their progressive rhetoric, and these people are very dangerous.
Fair.
All right. Okay, we've run out of time. So mine is not a question, but a comment, and hopefully we can go for tea after my intervention. And this is really to thank you because of how you articulated dehumanization and hyperhumanization. You have to understand both. When you think hyperhumanization, also think of people who want to live forever. Who lives to be? I think you have to whatever you want. As we did in 2020, beginning of 2020. And many of you knew what to do because you were listening. Of course, we often talk about being decolonial thinkers, but I want to appeal to you that you attend to your decolonial spirit. Because there may be things you have not been able to understand such that you can articulate like a decolonial thing. But your spirit, decolonized, we will know. Trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Let me say one sentence.
One sentence.
Yeah.
One sentence.
The sentence has commas, you know that.
All the critique I did about Quijano, Mignolo, etc., be careful because we can all fall into those traps.
Yeah.
Okay? This is very important. We cannot just, how you say, scapegoat and say, oh, these people who. No, watch yourself. Watch myself. We can all fall into those imperial traps.
Okay, great, thank you.